and greetings from the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Little Flower in San Antonio, Texas. Thank you for joining us for day 2 of our novena of reflections leading up to the Feast of St. Thérèse on October 1st. We are looking at different elements or themes in the little way of St. Thérèse. And today our theme is a boldness of holy desires in St. Thérèse. Yesterday we spoke of how confidence in God's faithful and merciful love for her was the foundation of St. Thérèse's little way. Well, this faith and confidence in God's merciful love produced in St. Thérèse this fruit of freedom of spirit, of boldness, and in the face of God. Now, this boldness and freedom of spirit was in contrast to a spirit of fear. And St. Thérèse knew many good people who desired to please God, but there is an element of fear in their relationship with God. They emphasized and saw God primarily in virtue of the attribute of his justice. And so she realized that sometimes people try to do the good and to avoid sin more out of fear of punishment rather than out of love for God. But Therese's confidence in God's love freed her from this fear. She had a confession one day with a priest who helped to free her of scruples and of being intimidated by her own faults and little sins. And so St. Thérèse writes of him, "He launched me full sail upon the waves of confidence and love, which so strongly attracted me, but upon which I dared not advance. He told me that my faults caused God no pain, and that holding as he did God's place, he was telling me in his name that God was very much pleased with me. My nature was such that fear made me recoil. With love, not only did I advance, I actually flew." So she realized that fear can hold us back in our relationship with God. Freed from this fear and launched upon these waves of confidence in God's love, Thérèse says she flew. And she would write later on in her life, she said, "It seems to me that if all creatures had received the same graces I received, God would be feared by none, but would be loved to the point of folly. And through love, not through fear, no one would ever consent to cause him any pain." What a sweet joy it is to think that God is just. That is, that he takes into account our weakness, that he is perfectly aware of our fragile nature. What should I fear then? Must not the infinitely just God, who deigns to pardon the faults of the prodigal son with so much kindness, be just also toward me, who am with him always? So even God's justice, Thérèse came to understand within the framework of his mercy. That in his justice, he takes into account our weaknesses and forgives us and is unfailing in his love for us, just as he was unfailing in his love of the two sons in the parable of the prodigal son. And so this confidence, this boldness in God's faithful love gave St. Thérèse the courage to have boldness in her desires. And so, for example, in her spiritual autobiography, The Story of a Soul, St. Thérèse writes of her desire to love God more than he had ever been loved before. She wanted to enter Carmel at the age of 15, and that was just not allowed. But she had a chance on a pilgrimage to Rome to receive personally the Holy Father, the Pope's blessing. And she was told, you do not speak to the Pope unless he speaks to you. But in her boldness, St. Therese asked Pope Leo XIII the permission to enter Carmel at the age of 15. And his wise answer was, if God wills it, it will happen. And it did happen. On the day of her profession of vows as a Carmelite, Therese asked God the favor of releasing not just a few souls from purgatory, but every soul from purgatory. Such was her confidence. And then finally, in her offering to merciful love, St. Therese writes, I feel it, oh my God, the more you want to give, the more you make us desire. I feel within me immense desires, and it is with confidence that I ask you to come and take possession of my soul. St. Therese had confidence in God's infinite love for her, and so this love filled her with a desire to love God just as he loved her, that is, infinitely, immensely, with all her being. And so may St. Therese help us to likewise build a relationship with God that is founded not on fear, but on confidence in his merciful love for us, and to have this holy boldness as she did, to be open to God's infinite love in our lives. As St. Therese says, we can never have too much confidence in the good God. He is so mighty and merciful. As we hope in him, so shall we receive.